It's Friday night, which means it's time for another episode of the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast. I'm Ashley.
I'm Casey, and I have the biggest, stupidest smile on my face. It feels so good to be back for now. Last time, we ended the podcast. I have a note here to be funny, and I'm a little rusty, Ashley. I don't know what this banter's gonna be. I'm just gonna Michael Scott my way through this and see where it ends up. We are back for this special, and we are very excited about it.
Yeah, we did not put out a weekly Twitter poll when we ended the podcast, and we're not planning on putting one out tonight. So if you're only in it for the Twitter polls, sorry to let you down, guys.
How about when FNN did the Static Cling special, did it change too much from its original incarnation?
We really have just gone far, far away from our roots with this revamp here, Casey. We gotta rethink this.
Oh, it's a train wreck already. Anyway, this week we are back, everybody. We are discussing the released today Static Cling special of Rocko's Modern Life. Big spoilers warning here. This came out literally 24 hours ago. I'm going to release it pretty much as soon as we're done recording here. We are recording this Friday night, the night it came out. And go watch it first before you listen to this if you care. It's short. It's 45 minutes, but it is a full 45 minutes, and it is delightful. So go check it out. Pause it now. We'll wait here for 45 minutes, and then you can come back.
All right, now that Casey's finished putting in that clipped 45-minute break. But, feel free to follow us on that Twitter. It's at FNN_podcast. And we got a Facebook. That's facebook.com/FNN podcast. And you can review us on iTunes so that others can listen to all of the old and great things and beg for us to come back, which we all know it's coming. The fans have been clamoring for this for months now, Casey.
It's so true.
We can barely keep them down.
Yep, and just to show that time has passed, iTunes no longer exists since we made the podcast. We're already dated.
That feels appropriate somehow, given the context of the film.
Just to show that things have changed. We're going to be nostalgic, but not too nostalgic, just like the theme of this delightful special. So welcome back, everybody. Hopefully it's a little kick of nostalgia for you, back to the good old days of early 2019. Well, thank you so much for tuning in once again. Now let's get started.
From the Nicktoon Animation Studio in Hollywood.
Alright, like we said in this one, we're covering Rocko's Modern Life's Static Cling, which aired on August 9th, 2019, or today.
I think the first and only time that's ever happened on our show. Have we...
Well, didn't we do the Jungle movie?
Yeah, but we recorded that night. We did. You're right, but we've never watched, recorded, and released something all on the day it came out.
That is true. And also that one, I feel like the release was a little bit different. Like, it wasn't straight up on Netflix. I don't know. It is what it is.
Regardless, in this one, gotta get that classic phrase in there. In this one, after being stuck in space for 20 years, Rocko and his friends return to a late 2010s era O-Town with modern amenities such as constantly updating touchscreen phones, radioactive energy drinks, food trucks, and coffee shops on every corner. Rocko, who does not share Heifer and Filbert's enthusiasm for the 21st century, attempts to get his favorite television show and our favorite television show, The Fatheads, back on the air, since it is the last remnant of his past. To do so, he goes on a quest to find the show's creator.
Yeah, it really is so pleasant. It's a joy. And it is... I mean, kind of obviously, right? Like, it's a very meta theme going on here. We have a Rocko's revival where he is trying to bring back his favorite show as a revival because he misses his past, and that show hasn't aired in 20 years, which is just kind of like how Rocko's hasn't aired in 20 years. You know, like it's a little on the nose, but it works.
It totally does. Yeah, my general thoughts, I loved it. It was there was some people may call it pandering, but I found the representation in this to be the highlight, and that's what's been making the headlines so far. But beyond that, I think there are some really creative plot devices. We have some sitcom-y tropes of the A and B plots coming together. We have some classic Rocko's gag humor. And we also have, yeah, like Ashley said, some really meta theatrical storytelling where it's commenting on the fans of old Nicktoons like us. Like, we'll get to it, but I found many lines where I felt personally called out as a member of some fandoms.
But I did think, and we'll get into it more for sure, but the quote-unquote pandering I thought was very well done. It, like, you know, it wasn't over the top. It really was just like, this is part of my life and this is what it is, you know, like it's people are going to get upset what they're going to get upset at, but
I found it very moving.
If we start from the beginning though, just to get through the whole deal. So they're out in space, they being Filbert, Heifer, and Rocko, and it's not fully explained exactly how that happens, is it?
You know, it's making me wonder, because we've never seen the final episode of Rocko's, that if that truly is where it leaves off.
Yeah, and in any case, they're in space, and it doesn't really matter how they get there, because it's Rocko's, and we don't need to question this anyways. And we, Heifer was originally singing, I don't remember how many bottles of root beer he sings, but, you know, one of those take one down, pass it around, blah, 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 bottles of blah, 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 yeah. So he gets down to one, and Filbert says something like, oh, you've been singing that song for 20 years, you finally finished, and it's just a cute kind of way to start us off, right? Like, we get Heifer's usual, you know, antics, we've got Filbert being himself, and it's just, it immediately feels right. Well, actually, hold on.
Really big man.
I was going to say, I skipped the nipples.
Never skip the nipples. The nipples are the framing device of this entire special, and I applaud Joe Murray for doing that.
and honestly, like, I'm just glad, because the show's always had its weird raunchiness, and I was a little worried that it wouldn't make the, you know, wouldn't be allowed as much, because a lot of times we watch things like Rocko's and you know, like Ren and Stimpy-esque shows, and we're like, how did they get away with this? Mm-hmm. And here he is, still keeping the nipples alive.
Yeah, so the really big man introduces the whole concept. He's reading the Star Wars intro at the beginning before they blow it up with their spaceship. And yeah, he changes his voice. It was this sort of more female-typed voice, and then he clears his throat, and then, you know, triumphantly declares that you must look into his nipples of the future to see Rocko now. And his nipples sure do swirl around and get larger and larger until we are in 2019.
And I forgot, was it Nipples of the Future before? There were definitely nipples referenced.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't Nipples of the Future, but it was something like that.
It doesn't matter.
It might have been. He says, gaze into my nipples of something.
Of something. So there's a lot of kind of, and maybe not super subtle, there's a lot of callbacks that are kind of just conveniently the pieces of the show that we watched.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, so that's one of them, but there's another one later where we hear the Recycle song come back from the Earth Day episode, which, yep, to be fair, was a very big episode of the show. It got a lot of press, so like it makes sense that that's one that they would kind of toss in there, but still brought a smile to my face just to have those old bits of nostalgia back.
It's like in the Jungle movie, it felt like they referenced a lot of episodes we specifically have watched on the show.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, feels good to to be brought back to Rocko's. It's also, I mean, like, we haven't watched Rocko's in quite some time, so it just felt good to have some of those classic antics sitting around.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they're sitting around the TV like they always do, and they've got an orange VHS tape, which I love. I think that has to be a callback to the Nickelodeon VHS tapes of the 90s that were orange. And they are, first of all, I gave my obligatory entrance applause like I do when we watch things to Filbert this time because he's my favorite. And
Well deserved.
I would say he's a queer icon of this show, but clearly we have a new queer icon, which we will get to. The videotape, the VHS tape, is of the Fatheads, their favorite show. And here's the first time I felt called out. Filbert goes, "We've watched this 1,000 times, but I still go crazy for it." That's like us with SpongeBob or truly any of these shows.
Absolutely. And it goes into just this typical, like, I mean, the Fatheads show is kind of garbage.
It's pure slapstick, yeah.
It's pure slapstick, and it's purely, our buddy Ralph making fun of his parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's where we're at. They're hyped. They're still watching their same old things, and there is kind of like a, not necessarily criticism of, but kind of just like this nod towards like the idea of kind of over, I don't know the right way to put this, but kind of like over exaggerating how good things in the past are, right?
You're
like
right.
how obsessed we get with them.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that at all, that it's like the Fatheads is like not a good TV show, but they love it, and they love it even more now that time has passed. Like, they like the Fatheads in the show proper, but never to this extent.
I mean, also, to be fair, it's like one of the only VHSs they have, and they're out in space for 20 years, so I suppose...
Right. Which, speaking of, I was looking at the list of Rocko's episodes Wikipedia. I don't see them ending up in space. There is, in the episode that Joe Murray considers to be the official series finale, called Future Schlock, the description is, 17 years into the future, Filbert's children ask Filbert the meaning of a banana which they found in a refrigerator. So clearly one of these things isn't canon, or there's alternate timelines happening, because that does not check out math-wise.
That is accurate. And, I can forgive it.
Of course, of course.
I mean, and I'm just to back up a hot minute, too. So thrilled that this happened. I know, like, there were some tweets from Joe Murray that were kind of disheartening, where he was like, I don't know what the future of this is, and I can't imagine how he feels right now to have it on Netflix, which I actually think is a better place for it than Nickelodeon at this point, right? Like, how many people tune in to cable networks still, or go on to Nickelodeon's website, versus how many people go on to Netflix. I hope it ends up, getting some press for him.
Yeah, I was disappointed when it wasn't at the top of my feed today. I had to search for it. I was hoping it would be right there at the top.
Yeah.
But, well, okay, so the rocket ship is canon. I'm looking at the description of Future Schlock, so maybe we should watch this episode later. I don't understand how the Filbert's kids become a part of this. Although it's that who was there at the end. His 5 followers, the family.
He references his wife. Unclear. We should watch the episode and see how it pans out.
Yeah,
but I don't...
so I rescind my criticism of it not being canon. It probably is. It looks like it is.
Okay. So somehow, we don't need to worry about all the years math, but somehow it pans out.
Mm-hmm.
We also find out that this whole time, Heifer has had a remote that just could let them get back to Earth. But it's been on his butt for the past 20 years, so that's very appropriate, too.
Yeah, that was funny.
I do appreciate, too, like, Rocko's has always had this balance of kind of stupid humor and smarter humor, and I'm glad that we still have that vibe going on here.
Yep, and they're bantering back and forth, of course, and Filbert keeps, like, kind of weirdly fat-shaming him, but then it kind of comes around as being okay in my book, because Heifer is like, I'm a steer, which I thought was really funny. It's like, yeah, he's big. That's how he is. That's his species.
So, yeah, it's pretty appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's, we're getting there. They drop on in. They're back in O-Town, because gotta conveniently drop exactly where you fell out on the world, right? Exactly.
And as he drops out there, we get the theme song as they see like the O-Phone 9, which upgrades to an O-Phone 10, and everyone immediately runs in to buy it. It's not subtle, their references, but they're not trying to be subtle.
I was gonna say, I don't think they have to be,
No, they
to
don't.
get their point across.
Rocko's is larger than life, that's for sure. But then we go into the Rocko's Modern Life, same theme, but totally updated animation style, and the actual things that are happening. He's being like chased by smartphones, and I half expected it to be a like phones are bad kind of thing, but I'm so glad they didn't go there. Like they commented on without judging current society.
Yeah, and I think that was one of my, I don't know, like concerns is exactly the right word, but like, like I was like, all right, is this just going to be like a look how bad society has gotten in the past 20 years? But it's really not what it's about. It does kind of have some commentary, right, on just kind of the weirdness of it all, but it's not insulting. It's not trying to, it's just kind of like, here, this is what it is. The world of smartphones now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Rocko, as we see quickly, is really struggling of his new modern life.
Yeah, we do see Heifer and Filbert are picking it up, and they're having a grand old time, right? Like they jump on in, they're smartphoning immediately,
Yep. He watches a TV show called Fat Cats in Tiny Houses, which I would totally watch. That's the second time I felt called out by this special.
It would be an amazing show, and
but could only exist like 2015 on, like
oh yeah,
it's a very specific thing.
Yeah, it's good though. It's good, and we do have Mrs. Big Head shows up, and she's like gonna make him dinner, and
she's like not a sexual harasser now, which I like. Like
yeah.
She's like pretty cool now.
I say she seems more motherly, right? Like
Right.
It seems like she's more like, oh, let me make you food. You don't have any food in your fridge. Let's come over to my house and I'll make you food. But like it seems much less predatory, which
less
is
aggressive. It feels like the show has sort of upgraded very nicely to the times. Like there's some dated humor in those older episodes, and we still have the like weight jokes about Heifer, but other than that, it's like it's very funny and cutting edge without like making anyone the butt of the joke, or like without making Rocko's like discomfort the butt of the joke. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, and it's I think there is an amount of relatability here, right? Like and to some extent too, like Joe Marie knows that the people who are watching this are kind of nostalgic people, right? Like we are watching this to see Rocko's revamped. Like that's why we're all hyped about it, right? So we are kind of the people that are susceptible to some of this, like, oh, things nowadays aren't the same as they used to be kind of a feel. So yeah, I just think it's an interesting way to go about it. But yeah, it's certainly a modernized version of the show without losing all of the things that make it what it is, right? So we then kind of shift over to, and I forget exactly what happened, but something falls onto a calculator that Mr. Big Head has.
It's from the rocket crashing, I thought. I think it's directly tied to Rocko's landing. Peace goes in. Something happens where Ed Big Head, where he works at Conglamo, his calculator gets reset to 0, showing the company profits. That piece of paper gets printed and brought to the head honcho of Conglamo, who then runs the numbers, and instantly everything is chaos.
Yeah, it's exactly how modern businesses are ran, right? Like the CEO runs a number down to a bank, and then depending on that number, that drives the stock prices. So it's great.
Right. And then, of course, as Ed Big Head, he sings like the only real song of the show, full song of this special, is on his drive home about how he's Ed Big Head and life is great and blah, blah, blah. He gets home, the reporter shows up. Her name is Nosy, I think, and she's like an aardvark type animal. And she throws the mic in his face. How does it feel to have, ruined Conglamo? And then he gets fired. Then they said, we have to tear down your house. And then Rocko shows up, who was like the scourge of his existence before. So
I do want to mention, too, that Conglamo is revealed to be 95% of O-Town's economy.
Checks
which
out.
I mean, like, things like the Googles and Amazons of the world are getting closer every day, right? So, but
right.
it's it all kind of ties up to Rocko coming in here and his whole life falling apart, and Then they come to the conclusion, basically, that, well, Rocko is basically like, well, what we should do is revamp this old cartoon I love, because that's going to fix everything somehow, because it could make money and, save the economy. And this is another one of the call-out moments. Big Head responds with, an old cartoon isn't going to solve the kind of problems you have. I'm like, all right, look.
Yep, that's call-out number 3. Yep.
That one's the biggest one, I think.
Like, oof.
I was like, hurts a little bit too much. This is solving all of my problems and everything is fine and I don't need to hear it.
There's also an interesting commentary on how much power fans have today. Like, he even literally says, today's fans have power. Like, you can get a reboot done of the Fatheads, and that's kind of true. That's sort of how this Rocko's thing happened, right? It's fans demanding it, and with Twitter and with social media, there's power to the people in that form.
Yeah, absolutely. And given that giving them power doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get them exactly what they want, but so it goes.
We got to talk about the booger jar.
Yeah, I was going to say, we move over to, what's his name? Booger Jar Man.
Yeah, the guy who's in charge of Conglommo.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, but he's in charge. He's very upset about how down all of his profits are, and he talks about how the only thing he has going, or has left, is his booger jar, and he's just, like, taking his boogers and putting it in this jar. We later see, like, this guy carrying, like, 15 of them. It's actually, like, a little over the line for the gross out humor, but it's the one thing that happens in this entire 45-minute special that really is gross out humor, so I'll allow it.
Yep. It's Mr. Dupet is his name. And he only has like 8 appearances, not including Static Cling, but one of them was in Zanzibar with an exclamation point, which was the musical episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I remember him chilling in the office when they all kind of chant on Earth Day, right?
Exactly.
Power to the people.
Power to the people. So yeah, it's what else have we got? Yeah, the booger jar, he drops it on Ed, and that's disgusting.
It's gross. Basically, he says, like, oh, well, if we're gonna do this, then we need to get... Well, he hires some modern-day animators to make their version of it.
With German accents.
Rocko is like, nah, we gotta get the real man. We gotta get Ralph up in here. Like, we gotta find him. And, that there is some... Because, I mean, we later see their version of the special, and it's like this horribly 3D animated show that is, like, completely not true to... And again, admittedly, we say that The Big Heads is not a good show to begin with, but it is horrible.
Yup. So they seek out the show's creator, and they are asking... They keep showing their picture... And they're like, have you seen this toad? They keep saying. And they're talking to these aliens on a planet. And one alien goes like, yes, in a weird alien voice. And the other one just goes, no, we haven't. It's like a normal human. And for some reason that just sent me. I thought that was so funny.
Oh, it's great. It's the little things. It really is. But then we then find this sort of mysterious van. And what we think of, or what they immediately respond to as being Ralph, is selling these
fathead popsicles.
Yeah. Just kind of like your generic, like, ones with, like, the gumballs and everything that look nothing like the real face kind of
those
deal.
Horrifying SpongeBob ones.
Like, exactly like that.
Yeah.
And we kind of have this introduction. Rocko goes on about how he wants the show back, and I love the transition here where Rachel says, oh, it's not Ralph, by the way, it's Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's just what it is. Like, it's just thrown out there. And
yeah, she, like, lets her hair down, and we see that she has, like, feminine presenting clothes and heels. And yeah, all 3 of them just go, oh, cool, that's awesome. And that's it.
Yeah, and my apologies for the previous misgendering. It was really just a way to stick away from spoiler alerts. I'm not trying to be some kind of weird curmudgeon-y person about this. I think the reveal is really well done. I think it's just really, it's kind of simply put out there, right? Like, it's really not like this big over the top thing, right? Like, it really is just, she's just saying, like, oh, feel like I found myself. I feel more comfortable, and this is who I am.
And it's set up interestingly where Rachel originally left her parents saying, I'm going to go away for a while, I need to find myself. And this was one part of that, that wasn't the whole thing. But it was very interesting to see how direct she is about it and how quickly they just, deal with it. And this shouldn't be a big deal. This, Joe Murray is not a hero for doing this, but I think it's very cool to have a show, a 90s Nicktoon that was often, all these shows were so based in gender. They're so male dominant, and like we've talked about, when we tried to do a girl power episode, we could only find like 3 shows of all of these classics. And so I think it's a good start when it comes to, and as we'll get to later, Ed Bighead reacts, very strongly to this and is overwhelmed by what he calls TMC, which is too much change. And I wonder how many Rocko's fans are going to feel like this about this special, or read a headline about this episode where, of course, Rachel being trans is the headline so far of this show, and how many people are rolling their eyes and going, oh, more pandering or whatever. But I think it's really bold and excellent that he and the rest of the team just decided to go for it anyway and not care what people would say.
Yeah, and like I'm sure there are people who are going to be like, look, there's nothing that points to the original show that this is what it was and blah blah blah. But like, there doesn't need to be anything that specifically makes it obvious, right? Like, there's nothing that means that she would have made this obvious at any given point, right? Like, and perhaps she didn't even know, hypothetically, right, at the time of the show 20 years ago, right? Like, she had to figure it out, like, it's I think it's very well done, and I did appreciate too that Mr. Bighead did not just accept this. I was a little worried. I appreciated that Rocko and them were like just accepting and like, that's awesome, let's go with it. But I was a little worried that it was going to be too little of a thing, right? Because it is a big deal.
I'm glad it also didn't dominate the entire special.
Absolutely.
What it became was one more issue between the two of them, because Ed and Rachel never got along in past episodes, and so this adds one more thing to that and makes it harder for them to reconnect, as it already would have been difficult because she disappeared for so long and didn't exactly leave on great terms with them. But it's, we're not producing more episodes of FNN that we know of right now, so I don't feel afraid to get a little political on this one. The whole concept of TMC and the way that Ed Bighead talks about change, to me, seems like a pretty direct parallel to Trump voters, or to people of that mindset, that the world is scary, I don't know how to adapt to all this change that's happening, so I'm going to dig in my heels. And I found it extremely relevant and refreshing to see in a cartoon.
Yeah, and I do think, too, although Bighead is often made to be this oversimplistic kind of mind, it's not exactly making fun of him either, right? Like, there is some amount of understanding that all of this change is difficult, right? Like, that it is a lot going on in his life. We're not necessarily meant to sympathize with him, but we're not meant to hate him exactly either,
I mean, the concept of him losing his job suddenly, it's, to me, the more I think about it, the more direct it seems to be about the commentary on the world is changing, and many people react by sticking to what they know.
Yeah, and it is a reality we have, right? And it is just, it's kind of, it's, and even this obviously oversimplifies it. There are certainly people who have come out as gay or trans or whatever to their parents who do not have it all wrapped up nicely in a 45-minute episode.
Right.
But it's, at some point we do kind of want some amount of a happy ending to the episode, and it is what it is. We do have sort of this sweet touching moment, but I think the message overall, and what we kind of have maybe a little bit spoon-fed to us by the literal winds of change within the episode.
Probably my least favorite part of the whole thing, but
yeah,
very silly.
that was a little like spoon-fed.
Yes. It was
like we
kind of a Deus Ex Machina in a way, but what can you do?
And kind of like we were already getting there. Well, and part of it too, we're having this kind of good heart-to-heart conversation with Rocko and Big Head, and Rocko's kind of like being like, if we don't try to, I don't remember exactly what he says, something about like if we don't try to catch up with times, then like we're gonna miss out on things. And like we could have just had this be this kind of real one-on-one talk, and then we kind of had this weird, like I said, it's like a cloud, winds of change, ominous voice just like chatting to them, and it's kind of interesting, but it didn't quite work as well as I think Joe might have intended for me personally.
Yeah, I wish I'd written the line down, but it was something along the lines of like, sure, change is hard, but you can get a new job, you can get a new house, but you can't get a new relationship with your daughter without trying, you know? It's like, this is your one shot, this is your one kid.
I do want to call out too, and I thought it was just an interesting play on the whole thing. So we have in older episodes of the show many yells of "I have no son" when Mr. Big Head gets frustrated, and we have this interesting "I have no daughter," which is kind of like this double-sided. One, it's this throwback to that old line, and two, it's like he's not accepting that he has a daughter, right? Like in his mind, he's like, no, that's my son because that's who it is, and I just thought that was an interesting way to play that off.
Yeah, and my only big critique of the whole thing is that it is really rushed, and it left me wanting more, which is a good thing, but I feel like it could have used an hour 15 or even an hour and a half. But the pacing was tight. There's certainly no fat on the whole thing, except maybe the winds of change.
Yeah, 45 minutes is very fast, especially, like, again, we're including that we need this sort of beginning opening to... Well, first we need the very beginning opening of the nipples of time, and now we've got to have the opening with the space, right? So we do have, I don't want to call it filler, but we do have, some framing to do, and 45 minutes is probably not significantly longer than the combined, what was it called? The combined Wacky Deli. There we go.
Yeah, that's true. That was, probably about closer to 30 minutes, yeah.
But still, right, like, and that was only like a longer episode, and that one also again didn't need all of this framework that we kind of needed to make this make sense.
And it'll get compared to the Jungle Movie a lot, but I loved them both, and they're very different, and they're accomplishing completely different things.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're two completely different shows, right? Like Hey Arnold and Rocko's are almost nothing alike, and they really don't need to be compared, and that's okay.
Right. And the duality of like Rocko struggling with his own change and Ed struggling with his is super interesting, and that they're able to connect there. And at the end, it's Ed Bighead who's telling Rocko, hey, like, you got to see the light. Times are changing, like, sure, it's hard, but you can't go back. And like nostalgia just isn't, it's not enough.
Yeah. And I do like that it's not necessarily saying that nostalgia is bad or terrible, right? Like you can still enjoy your old shows and things, but that there is a little bit of change of things that needs to happen. I will say, however, this is just my one, and I don't know this is necessarily relevant. So Rachel's special includes a baby Big Head, and Rocko gets all huffy and is like, oh, this isn't the original, not Big Head, or yes, no, what's their the fake show's name?
Fatheads.
Sorry, I'm getting lost in my adjectives for big here. The Fatheads. There's a baby Fathead, and Rocco's like, oh, this isn't like the Fatheads I know and love. This is all wrong. We can't like this. And I get that commentary, but also like there are things like Fairly Odd Parents that did just change for the worse, right? Like I think that there is place for kind of commentary on like this isn't as good as it used to be, right? Like this show has gotten bad, and I think that added characters like Poof to Fairly Odd Parents did make it a worse show.
It
or
felt
rather,
like a very direct attack on Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah. But like we're supposed to kind of side with them at the end of the day, right? That like Rocko is wrong for being upset about this because it's okay that there's change, and I get that, but also I was like, well, sometimes and in the context specifically of television, I was like, I don't know that every it is what it is. You
Right.
could have your thoughts and feelings, but I think in general that one. And I guess to be fair, it's not necessarily just that Poof exists. It's that Poof existed and didn't contribute anything to the show.
Right.
Anyhow.
But ultimately, it's a huge
Mini rant.
success, and it simultaneously like saves Conglommo, and everyone runs off with the profits of Conglommo in this sort of post-capitalist like looting, and it's very funny. They're like, "Isn't this like harming the economy?" And they're like, "Who cares? We're rich."
Yeah, I think Rocko says, "Isn't this illegal?" And Heifer says, like something about, "But everyone's happy."
That's what it is. That's the exchange. Yeah. And yeah, Filbert keeps vlogging the whole thing to his 5 loyal subscribers, which it turns out are his family. So we'll have to watch that actual finale of the show and see if that's the same family. It must be.
Also, thanks to our loyal 5 followers listening in right now.
That's how I felt when he said that. It's like, "It's your boy." I forget his username, but it's something silly.
Something Fishsticks
Yeah.
96.
Fishsticks 96, yep. Which I wonder if it's an inverted 69 kind of thing, or if it's
96 because of the end of the show.
yes, because that was the year Rocko's ended, but
Yeah.
who knows?
It could just be that Fishsticks 96 sounds kind of cool too. It doesn't really matter.
There are constant Easter eggs throughout this. We have a giant sign that says reboot that's pointing to where Rocko lands. We have, like, I believe a picture of a voice actor or Joe Murray himself in the final Fathead special, like just a live action photo.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff. So keep your eyes peeled. A lot of blink and you miss it stuff.
Yeah, it really is just very, very much what I think a reboot should do. And it's the same kind of thing that we said for Hey Arnold, is that it was true to the show but modernizes. And this does the same thing, obviously in a different way, but it's true to its original source content while being a modernized version that makes sense to air today. Right? Like it is relevant. It is modernized, and I appreciate that. Because we have enough Rockos out there that if it was just another sort of episode directly in those same lines, I don't know that it would have broken ground here. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the naysayers are going to naysay, and you're just going to have to ignore them. And I just don't think it's doing what they think it's doing. And I honestly don't even think that they, I mean, I haven't read much, but I would assume that people who call this pandering aren't really upset because they think it's out of place. They're just upset because they don't like those ideals in general.
I saw a tweet that was responding to some of the criticism, or not criticism, but the whining about that, and it said, yes, I forgot that there are two genders and 2 races. There's male and political, and there's white and political."
Yeah,
I thought that was very funny. Some people really just see when people of color exist as characters, or queer people exist as characters, they think it's political. And what is political about this show? I made the Trump comparison myself, but that's one reading of it. It's not like there's a Trump character in the show.
Yeah, there's been there's a similar thing put up about video game characters, how anytime there's like a woman video game character, they're like, "Oh God, we got to get political in here." And it's like, that's literally just it's just a woman. Like,
just a person.
Those exist in the world.
Yep, trans people exist. They should be characters in shows.
It shouldn't be that complicated.
Yep.
And and I guess like you could argue like, if she exists, why doesn't she just exist? But it is relevant to kind of make commentary on it, because it is, like I said, it's not something that everybody accepts, and it's not something that's necessarily easy. So I think it's kind of important to, at least now, and I hope for a day that, we can have a character in a cartoon just be trans and it's not, like, you can just leave it there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to kind of recognize that it's not all that simple for everyone, right? That it's not always easy.
Totally, but that ultimately her role in this special is bringing back the fatheads, helping Rocko realize, that nostalgia isn't all that it's cut out to be, and, reuniting with her family. And that's partially about her being trans, but it's about a whole lot of other things, too.
Absolutely.
On a more comedic note, it's funny to me that the big heads still don't get that the fatheads is about them.
Yeah.
Like, they're licking the ice cream cone, and she's like, this one kind of looks like you when you first wake up. It's like they just have no idea.
And yeah, the big heads are kind of like these caricatures, right? Like, they are meant to be over simplistic in a way, but I did thoroughly enjoy this. Definitely a little short. And I actually forgot, how long was the Hey Arnold special? Was it longer?
It's longer. I thought it was at least an hour, but we did watch it with commercials. Let me check. We have the technology, as Patrick would say. Jungle Movie, Hey Arnold. It is an hour, 21 minutes.
Okay. I was going to say, I felt like it was longer, but I couldn't. It's been a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do wish that this had a little more length. And I don't know enough to know if that was, an intentional decision or not. But the pacing is fast. You're certainly not going to get bored. You certainly have time to throw this into your schedule. Highly recommend it if you haven't watched it already. There's certainly more than what we've unpacked here. Although at this point, we're getting close to the length of the episode itself, but luck.
Yeah, we are, but we'll cut it short just before that, I think. Yeah, I'll just bring it up. I said we weren't going to, but you're all going to ask if we're going to do a Rocko or Invader Zim episode next week, because it does come out next week, also on Netflix. We might. That's the answer right now. We're not sure yet. We'll see how good it is. We'll see if we're up for it, and we'll see. But hopefully this little Friday night surprise will tide you over until we decide to do this again for whatever reason. Reboot culture has its issues, but when it's done well, and I think Rocko's and Hey Arnold both did it well, it can provoke really good discussion about what nostalgia is, what we keep from our past, and what we should leave behind. So those are the things I'm thinking about from this special.
Yeah, and I want to throw in there too. I think we'll do an episode on Invader Zim if we feel like we have things to say about it. We're not just going to do it to do it.
Right.
And we certainly had things to say here. I mean, I think especially relevant given that we're a podcast that certainly feeds on that nostalgia. We're certainly throwing back to all those old times, and I think we do need to remind ourselves now and then that and I think we bring it up too, right? Like, we do enjoy modern things. We do enjoy modern shows and modern devices, but there's a place for nostalgia. But hopefully all of you guys can branch out and remember that the old 90s Nicktoons aren't the only thing that was ever great, and that there are new great things coming around too, and you don't want to miss them. Listen to the winds of change, guys.
Unless he farts, then don't listen to the winds of change. Gotta get that fart joke in there, of course.
Oh, I do want to mention last for no real good reason that we do get the "My nipples sure are tired" is one of the last lines of the show, and we get that to close it out, and
because
it's beautiful.
Why wouldn't we?
So because that was such a great way to end the movie, Casey, my nipples sure are tired.
Mine are tired too. I say we give our nipples a rest for the night until we need them again to see into the future.
And with that, I guess we'll see you next time, guys.
I think that's it. We're not doing a formal conclusion tonight, but this was so lovely. It feels very good to be back on the mic, at least for a short while. We hope you all are doing well. We miss doing the show. It has been a very nice break, I will say. And, just like Rocko's Modern Life, as great as this special was, and hopefully our special was, I'm not quite sure it has the makings of a full return. So that's how I feel about both of these things right now.
Yeah. again, we always reserve the rights to start it back up, but it's not going to be today. Hopefully nobody got too excited, but it's a little taste of some Casey and Ashli madness, and with that, we'll see you around, or we won't.
Very fitting. I'm going to end it right on 45 minutes, which is the length of the special. Thank you all so much, and hey, we'll see you next time.